Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindie Chavez here. This is Tuesday, Election Day here in the United States, November 6, 2018. It is 8 a.m. New York time. That would be, let's see, I got to do my math now. 1 p.m. London time and 5 a.m. Los Angeles time. So we've covered the time zones. And Americans are up and going out to the polls today. In fact, the Google Doodle here in the United States says go vote instead of Google. So I think everybody's trying to get the vote out, Cindie.
Get the vote out. Please vote. Please vote.
So
Please
yeah,
vote.
and I was just telling you before the podcast that I have a degree in political science, and so I always like to do my political science stuff and dig into the stats and figure out what's going on. And it looks like it's going to be a very big turnout this year. Looks like it could be one of the biggest turnouts we've had since like the 1960s for a midterm election, which is really quite remarkable. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it looks like Americans are going to make their voices heard. We shall have to wait to see exactly what those voices are going to say, but nevertheless, it's a big day. And yesterday was a big day too. Sorry?
I was just going to say, vote for all the people that can't vote.
That's an interesting
Right?
way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. And, you know, I one of my dearest friends wrote a fantastic blog post recently. Jeanette Ma from Good Vibe University. She wrote a blog post about your vote might not be the most important thing. And I thought it was really interesting because she made a point we make all the time, and that is your alignment is the most important thing. Alignment first.
Right.
So make sure you're aligned to the idea of having your vote count. Having the outcome be what you're voting for, having the ideals and the values that you're voting for be the ones that, you know, are the winning votes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Whatever that is for you. Like, because we say it all the time on the show. We say alignment first. And I'm like, yeah. I think that, you know, makes a big difference, right? If it didn't make a difference, we wouldn't talk about it here. So it's like, get into that groove of feeling, the feeling of the wish fulfilled, like Neville says, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then go vote.
Yeah, I would say that it's actually even more important than voting. Not that you shouldn't vote. I'm just saying that if you vote and you do so starting not just from a place where you're in alignment, where you're in a good feeling place, but also where you're focusing strictly on phrasing things and thinking about things in terms of what you want and not phrasing them in terms of what you're against, your vote is going to have a lot, it's going to be a lot more powerful than just a single vote. I mean, there's a lot of people who will talk about how, well, one vote, that doesn't count for anything really. And in the range of, you know, large numbers, you can see where they come to that conclusion. But when you throw in the desire and the focus and the belief in what it is you really want, the vote just gets accentuated. I mean, it doesn't matter actually how you might want to physically count it in terms of the energetic power behind it. It becomes immense. So, you know, I would say combine the two together and make yourself really a super being. Put it out there what you want, not what you don't want, you know?
Yeah, people think their vote doesn't count, and then we see these races where someone wins by like 20 votes or something. Right. It does happen, right?
It does happen.
Like,
yeah, it's true. So, no doubt about it. And we also had a fun day yesterday afternoon during the afternoon podcast with Patty Framo. Patty has been bringing people on who wanted to get some coaching, to do some live coaching on the shows. And
yay, very good.
Yeah. And yesterday we were, I was kind of kibitzing, trying to help along. Patty was leading it, working with this person who was trying to improve her financial situation and a variety of things in her life. And we were helping her get focused on what it is that she was, you know, feeling about what were her desires and how would she feel about them. And our discussions about Neville really helped. Neville Goddard, because, you know, the basic phrase you like to use, assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and what that means and what we've talked about. I was using a lot of that, and it was actually helpful to her. So our Goddard episodes are paying off, at least for one particular listener, and hopefully for people who are listening in as well.
Well, I know I've gotten a few, you know, shout outs about it and had the same comment, like, thank you so much for talking about Neville. And, of course, I get a big smile on my face when I hear that, because I love Neville. And so, yeah, I want other people to, I think with Neville, it might be easy to give up quickly because, I mean, I've definitely started to read a book and put it down because it just wasn't easy for me to read. It wasn't resonating with me, whatever. And so I can imagine someone picking up Neville and putting it back down because just doesn't, it's a book that was written with a language that seems a little old-fashioned, and there's a lot of sometimes scripture quoting and things that may or may not, I can totally see someone just putting the Neville book down and going back to something else or going forward to something new that seems like it makes more sense.
Right.
So I'm always happy when people like hang in there with Neville a little bit, because if you keep digging, you'll find the treasure. So,
absolutely, yeah,
very good. That's exciting.
It is exciting. It was fun. It was really good. I liked it a lot, and I'm looking forward to our continued discussion of the book we're currently working on. We're up to chapter 2 of "Feeling is the Secret," and once again, we have to put our Neville decoder rings on because you have to be prepared to kind of do some translating in order to understand exactly what Neville's talking about. But fortunately, we have the translator extraordinaire on this program who's going to help us with that kind of thing. So,
oh goodness, well, I will do my best.
Your best is pretty darn good, I have to tell you. Your best is really good.
Thank you.
Your best has helped me to make sense out of something that I had trouble making sense out of, and that was Neville Goddard books. Because I mean, some of it is pretty straightforward. Some of it, when you first read it, you say, "What? What are you talking about? Speak English!" But
that's what I was saying too. Is the language is, first of all, most of these books or many of his things were written in the 1940s. So the language has changed a lot. Anyway, just our common, normal, everyday language has changed a lot. And then some of his ideas, the way he explains them or the phrasing that he uses is not really words we hear too often. So
right.
you have to be determined, I think, to get it. But
absolutely. But it's worth it.
Eventually, it's like you said, the Neville decoder ring. Eventually, it's kind of like algebra. One day you just go, "Oh, I get it."
I'm sure
people say that upper level math and different things that, it's a certain part of your brain that has to like come awake. I think there's a little Neville pod up there that wakens up. It's like, okay, I can get Neville. Do you get? It's like when you're learning a new language and suddenly you have a dream with that language, or you realize that you're thinking in that language, which is a real cool thing to experience. That's what's happening, I think. So, yay!
You mentioned that, and there's actually, I guess I could call it a related thing that I saw on Facebook. There was a gentleman from, I presume from a Middle Eastern country. I'm not sure where he was from because he said his primary language was Farsi, but he's trying to become a translator. He wants to learn English, Spanish, and German. And he was expressing how he's frustrated that he doesn't feel really confident about German. He was looking for some ideas about, how do I get better at German? How do I feel better about German? Because he was recognizing the feeling portion of it. And my recommendation is we'll have a conversation with a German, ask a German, how am I doing, But it also made sense because when you're trying to learn, particularly when you're using one of the different methods that are available, you can learn online, you can take, obviously you can take courses and that kind of thing. There's really nothing that supplants and replaces talking with a real German, with a real German accent, using real German vernacular, or whatever language you're trying to learn, And ultimately, the goal, like you just said, is to think in German or whatever the language is. Well, that's what we're trying to do with Neville. And I love the analogy that you made too about algebra, because I understand how it is for most people. For me, actually, math was really easy. Math came very easy for me. And so, early on in my life, I'd look askance at people like, why can't you find this easy? This is easy. I don't understand, But having run into the Neville situation, it's like, oh, yeah, well, now I understand.
I remember a friend that when she was in college, and she's a math professor, but when she was in college, there was some course, I don't know what it was, trigonometry, advanced, I don't know, something, and she just couldn't get it. And I remember her mother was actually a friend of mine and said, just, send prayers her way, because her teacher, her professor said, don't worry about it. It's an abstract way of thinking, and at some point, you are going to just get it. But there was a lot of doubt that would happen. It's like, I don't think this is going to happen. And then it happened, and she went home and she had told her mother, I get it. Like, I get it. Like in one moment, just everything was, oh, I see how it works. Like I get it. You know, and I've seen that with young children with reading.
Sure.
You know, 3 or 4-year-olds learning how to read and kind of struggling through it. And then one day, it's just like everything makes sense all of a sudden with reading words on a page. And so that's what we're going for. I like what you said. We want to think. We want to be able to think Neville.
Yes,
we want to
absolutely.
be able to. I want these ideas and concepts to be second nature to me. Mm-hmm. I want them to just be natural and to be the first way I think of things instead of struggling through disbelief and doubt and worry and all of those emotions at the bottom of the emotional scale until I finally remember something Neville said and go, oh yeah, no, I don't want it to be like that. I want to just go right to the good stuff.
And the fact is, the Neville decoder ring, we make fun out of, the fact that we have this Neville decoder ring, but it really does make a difference. And the reason I say that in the context of our current conversation, Louise and I, my wife Louise and I have talked about this a lot because she always struggled with math as well. And what she realized for herself, this is probably true for a lot of people, is that in her words, no one ever gave her the code book. And what she means by that is when you're learning math, there are a number of shortcuts that you can learn in order to smooth out the learning process for you. Little rules that you can pick up that you apply this rule and that's multiplication. You apply this rule, that's addition. And like with word problems, you remember word problems from math. If you wanted to understand what the word problem was saying, you had to decode words and realize that this word meant that and this word meant that. And once you could get that code book down pat, the math would come a lot easier. Well, she was never taught the code book. I was taught the code book. I never realized I was taught a code book, but I was. And that does make a difference. Well, that's why I'm so grateful for the Neville decoder ring. I mean, you've basically been decoding stuff and helping me make sense of it that I couldn't make sense of before because I didn't have any translator. I didn't have any way. I didn't have the code book to point to say, oh, when Neville says this, he really means that. Oh, okay, I get it now. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, it's great progress. I'm imagining that our listeners are having the same, aha moments about Neville.
I would think so.
Yeah. So.
Well, actually, we know so
excellent.
because we've been getting some good feedback about Neville.
Yeah.
By the way,
speaking of our listeners.
Well, yeah, we have to get some promos out, but I was just remembering, we also have an email that I wanted to respond to from one of the listeners. And so I'm going to try to bring that email up, and while I'm bringing that up, I'll also do the promos. So first and foremost, if you're not yet a subscriber, we want you to become a subscriber. And, of course, the easy way to do that is to go to the homepage of our website at loatoday.net, where you'll find icons for both iPhone and iPad users, as well as an icon for an Android user. You just click the right icon, and it just walks you right through the process. Of course, many people know how to search for a podcast themselves, so if you know how, you just look for loatoday.net in your podcast software. And also for our new and our existing subscribers, please continue to share, or maybe even start sharing if you haven't been sharing. If you haven't been sharing, like, come on, share the wealth. This is good. This is stuff people need to know about. But put it out on social media that you've been listening to loatoday.net. And really, we want you to do it every time that you listen to an episode, because if you do the repetition, it means, first of all, you're really putting out to the universe, I like loatoday.net, and the law of attraction is going to help find more people who are also in tune with the same kind of message, and we're going to start spreading the word at a faster and faster clip. So, please do take the time to put out the word and share the word and let people know, I'm a listener and I want you to be a listener too. We also, like I said, we got an email from Karen, a listener named Karen. This is actually, she sent 2 of them really, but the second one was more detailed. And I wanted to bring it up with you, Cindie, because I knew you'd have a really good take on this. So let me read it to you. It says, well, first of all, she was responding to something where I'd invited her to follow me on Facebook so she could see, as we're currently live streaming into the Law of Attraction Change My Life group on Facebook. She's a member of that group, and I was saying to her, follow me, and that way you'll always get the announcements about what's coming up. So she said, yes, I'm going to follow you, and I'm grateful for your response. I would like to know if you could help me with your energy in manifesting the funds I need to pay my bills this month. I need to manifest $3,000 today. I believe it's possible. I am imagining it as I type. I know it can happen. I'm ready to receive it. If you can help in any way, I am grateful for the extra energy going to my manifestation. I'm kind of new to this, yet have complete faith it's doable. Thanks. I'll tune in Friday to be part of the 8. She means by that we're going to do a special session on Friday based on the book The Power of 8 by Lynn McTaggart. She says, I live in Northern California, so I'll figure out the timing as I don't want to miss it. So she's raised an interesting issue there, Cindie, about I need to manifest money right away. If you get somebody who's a client or a potential client asking you that question, how do you handle that? How do you respond to them?
The way I respond is going to sound very practical and very non-magical.
Okay.
But it's the way I respond, and that is, okay, what can we do right away to step into the place of radical responsibility about this? So we can call our debtors and ask for extra time. Mm-hmm. We can see if there's anything we own that we can sell. Mm. We can reach out to people we know that might have some kind of extra work or work for us to do so that we can earn some quick money, some quick cash. Why do I bring that up? Because, I think about Esther saying, if you are focused enough, you can probably manifest a 5-star meal at McDonald's. But it would be easier to go to a 5-star restaurant and order that. Right? True. And so sometimes we are trying to magically manifest something where it comes like money comes out of the blue. And money does come out of the blue. Sure. As a matter of fact, some of my friends, they just call it blue money. Whenever they get money that's a surprise, whether it's finding a nickel on the sidewalk or getting a refund check or getting a coupon for something they were already going to buy, they say, blue money. And some of my friends have gotten blue money of tens of thousands of dollars. So that does happen. But energetically, the signature that we need to be sending out is one of responsibility and one of knowing we can make it happen, right?
Yes.
And part of that is, well, I'm doing what I can do. The universe is going to do the other part. Do I think we can just sit in a meditative state and conjure up all the money we need? Probably. Can most of us do that today? Probably not. Mm-hmm. Right? Even Neville says, look, I've had lots of times where I didn't have the result I wanted, but I've had enough times where I've had the result I wanted that I know it works.
Right.
Right? And so that would be my answer, is to get really practical first and do the things that you can do. But also, maybe I shouldn't have said first, alignment first.
Yes.
In other words, get yourself into a space of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Get yourself in a space where you know that it's going to be taken care of. Like, probably 20 years from now, you won't have that same $3,000 debt. It will have gotten taken care of somehow. Maybe it got paid a little bit late. Maybe it got paid off in time. Or maybe you got the money out of the blue and you were able to pay it all. Mm-hmm. But it will get taken care of. So step into that place of faith, of knowing that somehow this is going to get taken care of. I may not always know the how, but I know it will. Get your vibe into that place. Meditate. Get yourself into a good mental state. And then see what you can do to start the process. See what you can do to start the process and expect miracles. Expect that opportunities are there. Expect that maybe you forgot about some money that was available to you somewhere, right? Just expect that it's going to be taken care of. That's my take.
It's a good take. I think you're right. I think it's a good way to handle the situation. And I also like to, for myself, because I mean, you know perfectly well, I've had my own struggles where money is concerned. And I've noticed most often when I'm in that place where I'm feeling the most needy, I don't normally immediately recognize that I'm needy and that the needy is holding me back. But what I can often do is remind myself that whenever something isn't showing up at the speed that I'm hoping for, it means that in some way that I may not be aware of, I am resisting it. And resistance can show up in a lot of different ways. So if it's not showing up, there must be some way that I'm putting up resistance. And when I recognize that, then I kind of take like a mental inventory, and then I notice, oh, well, actually, now that if I'm really honest about it right now, I'm not feeling as great as I could feel. I could be getting myself into a better aligned place. And so it's a way of reminding myself, oh yeah, get back into alignment. Get back into alignment. That's the key.
Right.
Because ultimately, and it isn't even about trying to attract one particular sum at one particular time. It's where we want to get to on a regular basis. Because if we learn regularly to be in alignment, then we're going to more regularly get the overall kinds of results we're looking for. And it will enable us and give us the tools that we need to kind of delve into whenever we run into a resistance factor. Okay, I've been keeping myself fairly well aligned. Right now I can tell I'm not. I've slipped off the table, so to speak. I know I have to get back there. I can tell there's something that's blocking me here. Now at least I can work on it. Because now I'm working from a place where I have been used to feeling good. But when you're used to feeling bad all the time, when you're used to being out of alignment, you're basically trying to run uphill pulling a 5,000-pound weight. I mean, you've set yourself an insurmountable task just because you're not in that place of normally being in alignment. And that's hard. That's just plain hard, no matter how you slice that.
And it's in alignment with the thing you want.
Yeah.
Right? Not in alignment with our old money story.
Yes, right. Oh, geez.
Because when you said running up a hill, dragging a 5,000-pound weight, that's immediately what came to me is that weight represents our I am story.
Yes.
Right? So if our story is life is hard and money is tight and the economy is bad, but I know I'll make it. I'm a survivor. Now put those 5 pieces together that I just said as an I am story.
Yeah.
And what are you going to get?
You're going to get one opportunity after
another. Look at that guy
to
dragging
survive.
that heavy weight up that hill.
Exactly.
Life is so hard, but he's going to make it, I think, right? If that's always like the story that we're telling, then that's what we're going to be dragging around. And then, we could talk about this particular topic forever because another piece to it is that, and I tell clients this occasionally, and it's funny, I do this product called a moon treat on the new moon. Tomorrow's the new moon.
Right.
And it's a new moon in Scorpio. And in astrology, Scorpio rules over the 8th house. And that house is often called the house of sex, death, and taxes. And we astrology people say that in a funny way, but it's because it's the house of deep transformation. And it's the house of the shadow. And when we talk about shadow work in personal growth work, we're talking about being willing to shine some light on those dark places. And in those dark places are those stories that say, poor me, right? Those stories that are creating our life. So occasionally what I say to a client is, okay, I see the situation you're in. You're really upset about it. It doesn't feel good. And you know what? Part of you is really digging it. Part of you is into this.
No.
Part of you likes being in that place of victimhood. Part of you likes being in that sad place where nothing's working out. Why? I don't know. There's a million reasons why. Maybe because when we're in that place, we feel like we don't have to take the responsibility. Maybe we're tired and we're just rather be in this place where we can say, oh, just chuck it all. I'm not going to worry about it. Maybe we're in this place because we really want to be taken care of. Maybe we want someone to say, you know what, I'll take care of it. Because we want the feeling of someone loving us and taking care of us. And this is how we're getting there. Like, because we haven't found a better way to get there, right? And this usually moves us over there. Oh, I mean, these are all true reasons why this happens and why we get into a spot where part of us is saying, oh my goodness, this is the worst. This sucks. I don't want this. I've got to get out of this place. But actually there's a shadow part of us that's like, I kind of like it here. And we don't talk about it. Why? Well, because sometimes we're ashamed or embarrassed or we think, well, I'm not supposed to like it here. Like I'm not supposed to, this isn't supposed to be a strategy that people agree with. But sometimes it's there. And that's why this is so important. We've read it in the first chapter of this book. It's the Hermetic principle of as above, so below. As within, so without. Those things that are in that deep shadowy place that we don't pay attention to they start showing up in our situations and in what we're manifested. That's why we want our higher, wiser self. That's why we want to be in alignment with that part of us. Mm-hmm. We want our subconscious and our conscious to be united and in agreement of wanting the same thing, because then we have a united will. Then we can have some power and we can consciously create what we want. So there's a lot at play here when we get into these situations. And we're all in one of those situations. It might not be money for some of us. It might not be, but there's, right? We're all here to learn more about how we can consciously create what we want, because we all have things we want to create. And contrast is normal.
And we all have ways that we're blocking our own creation without realizing it. And that's just part of the human experience. We're learning what those are so that we can deal with them and handle them with the way we most need to handle them. That's part of it.
For the person that's struggling financially, I want to tell this quick story. Years ago, I had a situation where I was really, really struggling and had all of these things that were coming due. I hadn't even looked at my checkbook balance because I just didn't want to look at it. I mean, I wasn't paying attention because I had this very, fatalistic probably way of thinking about it at the moment. But I was like, hey, there's no money coming in and there's no money in there. So why do I look at it? I can't pay these bills. And I realized I was doing exactly what I'm talking about now, that I had this story, that I was feeling like a victim, that I was like, oh, this just sucks so bad. So I thought, I need to step into that place of, if I want to be financially successful, if I want to be the CEO of my own company, if I want to be somebody who handles it like someone that's got the resources, how would I do that? Because it wouldn't be sitting here thinking, oh, this is so awful. I would make a phone call. I would do something. I would step into that place of responsibility. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. I did look at my ledgers, and I did get the numbers down to the penny where I knew they were, which was pretty close to a penny. and I started making phone calls. I started calling people that were waiting on a check from me. I called the bank. And the crazy thing is that as I started making those phone calls, I felt so powerful. I felt more powerful financially than I'd ever felt even when I had oodles of money. Like suddenly, I just felt in control of my own situation. I felt like I had power to create whatever I wanted. I had the most lovely and wonderful conversations with people that said, oh, okay, how can we help?
Wow.
Bankers and creditors saying, well, okay, how can we help? Can we change your payment where it's lower? Can we make it to where this payment isn't due for 15 more days? It was unreal. And I was like, yeah, that would be great. Okay, perfect. Like when I got done with all the phone calls and when everything felt like it was going to be okay, right? It's like it was going to work. I just felt like, why did I ever not stand in this place?
It's a good question.
Why wasn't I standing in this place before? Nothing changed. Nothing really had changed, right? I hadn't gone out to get the mail and found a check for $1 million.
Right.
Nothing on paper had changed in that moment, but everything had changed energetically.
Which is the most important thing.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So, okay, short little story that might be useful to somebody.
That's a good story. Thanks for sharing it. I'm going to make sure I include that in the notes for the podcast, too. That was a good one. No, seriously. Well, and we forget about that. Actually, maybe people don't even know about this, but creditors very rarely hear from the people who owe money. When they do, and the people are just blatantly honest, like, I want to handle this, but I'm having trouble handling it, they'll just jump in to help because it's such a rare thing. Like, oh, wow, here's somebody who actually is willing to be responsible. They're in a tough spot. Maybe I can give them an idea. Maybe I can help them. Maybe I can, do something to make it easier for them. They love that. That's actually an improvement on their day. Imagine what they're doing all day long. They're taking all these phone calls or perhaps making phone calls to people who are deadbeats who aren't making their payments or whatever. And it's a miserable thing to do. Now all of a sudden they got somebody who they can do something good for. Whoa, what a different feeling that is for them.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Is that as my vibration raised, probably theirs did too.
Absolutely.
And then how did that, benefit me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously, like I would say that all those phone calls I made, most of them were very high vibration phone calls, if you want to label it like that, because they felt good. And they weren't about a topic that is supposed to feel good. See, that's that's that eighth house, the invisible realm, the shadowy sex, death, and taxes. What do people say when you're going, we're all going to do this pretty soon. We're going to go to Thanksgiving, right? And some of us are like, oh, all those conversations around the Thanksgiving table. And people, what do people say to us? They go, well, just don't talk about politics or religion, sex, death, taxes, money. It's like, if you don't talk about those things, you'll be good.
That's right.
Just, maybe that's where silence is golden comes from.
Yeah, right.
Like, don't talk about any of that stuff.
You take all the fun stuff away, you can't talk about anything.
All that in the sacred world, in the ancient world, all that stuff was sacred. Now in the modern world, it's all taboo. Ooh, don't talk about that. And so, but as we delve into those places, as we're willing to have that difficult conversation, the vibration is suddenly higher. It feels better. We're taking responsibility. We're moving up the vibrational ladder, moving up into better feeling places. So, my dad, when I was a kid, I was a young teenager, my dad had a successful business, and we went through one particular year. I don't know why. I don't know if the economy was bad. I don't know what happened. It was Dad's vibration. I don't know, but we had a rough year. And I remember him being on the phone one day, and he came in and he said, if you ever get in a tight spot and you can't pay somebody a bill that you owe, a debt, call them. Call them and tell them, I want to pay it. Call them and tell them, I'm sending you $5. Call them and tell them, I will send you a check for $1 in 3 days. Like, I want to pay this thing. And he said, and don't stop calling until it's all taken care of. Call them every week. Do whatever you can. Make relationships with these people. Let them know you have goodwill. And for whatever reason, that conversation with, like 14-year-old me, it really impressed me.
Yeah.
And I never forgot it. And I never had to use it, thankfully, for a very long time in my life. But I have used it on more than one occasion where I thought, need to make this phone call. Need to keep in contact, communicate, let them know my intentions. And it's a powerful thing to do. So I hope that's helpful to
I applaud your father. I applaud your father for telling you that. I mean, how few fathers actually pass that message along to their kids. That was a great, great message. So kudos to him. That was fabulous.
Yeah, it's served me well, and I've shared it with other people and with my own kids, and I hope it serves them as well too.
Absolutely.
So, great question.
Yeah.
Great question from Karen. Thank you so much, Karen.
Very, very good. Yeah, and it ties, of course, as usual, into the topic, because feeling is the secret, and that's what we're talking about, getting into that good feeling place. So, shall we slip on our decoder rings and dive in?
Yes. We are starting with Chapter 2 of the book Feeling is the Secret by Neville Goddard. As an aside, Neville Goddard actually just went by the pen name Neville. And a lot of these places that are reproducing his work, and like this website, will put Neville Goddard, and that was his name. But see, he just actually went by Neville. The book that I'm holding in my hand of his, that's a treasury, says Neville. He went by Neville, so he was a rock star with one name, like Cher or Sting, right?
Yeah.
Bono, he's a rock star.
Madonna before Madonna, right.
Right. So, Chapter 2, Feeling is the Secret. This chapter is entitled Sleep. And I think it's really interesting that we're reading it today because we both just had a discussion before the podcast that we both slept really well.
Yep. Because
occasionally, there are those moments when we get to experience the contrast of, I didn't sleep well. Sleep, the life that occupies 1/3 of our stay on Earth, is the natural door into the subconscious. I want to say, we hope we get to spend 1/3 of our stay. Because Abraham would be saying, no, it's 1/10. 1/10.
That's true. Yeah, they don't understand why we spend so much time sleeping. They think it's a waste of the time. Like, you got this great opportunity to live and you're sleeping through it? What's going on?
So I don't think Neville thought that way. I think these were adventures for him. So sleep, the life that occupies 1/3 of our stay on Earth, is the natural door into the subconscious. So it is with sleep that we're now concerned. The conscious 2/3 of our life on Earth is measured by the degree of attention we give sleep. Our understanding of and delight in what sleep has to bestow will cause us, night after night, to set out for it as though we were keeping an appointment with a lover. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumbering upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men, and sealeth their instruction. So he's quoting Job 33. And it's really interesting, I think, because he's talking about being excited to get to sleep. Mm. And anybody that's had sleepless nights will understand that a little better.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
It's like a good night of sleep is like a miracle, right? He says, it is in sleep and in prayer, a state akin to sleep, that man enters the subconscious to make his impressions and receive his instructions. Now, don't you think that's an interesting turn of phrase?
It's an unusual one, yeah.
That man enters the subconscious to make his impressions and receive his instructions.
It's certainly different from what Abraham says, but it's not inconsistent with it. It's just quite a different way of looking at it, because Abraham doesn't really talk about it in terms of making impressions. In fact, Abraham makes it a point to say, well, you don't really do any attracting when you're in a sleep state. But they also talk about how when you're in a sleep state, your dreams are reflective of, this is my words, not their words. They're reflective of what you're trying to let go of and what you're dealing with in your life. And he's turned it around and made it a completely different approach. He said that you're making an impression and you're receiving instructions, which it's almost like he says you're having a conversation with your dream state.
Well, and I think that if I recall correctly, Abraham's work definitely points us in the direction of falling asleep in alignment with what we want, right?
Right. That's a major point of theirs, yes.
Okay. So, and I think that's Neville's major point too. So in that, there's agreement. Mm-hmm. It's just what happens after that. Right?
Well, I think they're still agreeing. I think they're just looking at it differently. Neville's looking at it in terms of how do you interact with it. Abraham is saying this is the result of it. You know, one's the interaction and one's result, you know. Okay.
And so earlier in the first chapter, we talked about the conscious being male and the subconscious being female. He's bringing that up against here. He says, he says the male and female become one flesh. In these states, the conscious and subconscious are creatively joined. The male and female become one flesh. Sleep is the time when the male or conscious mind turns from the world of sense to seek its lover or subconscious self. The subconscious, unlike the woman of the world who marries her husband to change him.
Oh, jeez.
Unfortunately, as a relationship coach, I know this to be true in many cases.
Oh, God.
Unlike the woman of the world who marries her husband to change him, the subconscious has no desire to change the conscious waking state. But it loves it as it is and faithfully reproduces its likeness in the outer form of world. So here we go with the as within, so without, as above, so below, right?
Right.
And what I like about this particularly is that reminder that the subconscious doesn't have any desire to change the conscious waking state. Now, it absolutely has the power to. It just doesn't have the desire to, which is why when we're telling a story that isn't really benefiting us, but we tell it over and over, planting those seeds in the subconscious, the womb of creation, that the subconscious doesn't say, oh, that's not good. You don't want to plant those seeds.
That's true.
I don't want to create that. You're not a victim. You're not poor. Don't do this. The subconscious just says, okay. Kind of like planting seeds in a garden. The garden does not reject because it doesn't like tulips. It just says, okay. Okay, so the subconscious doesn't have a desire to change the conscious waking state, but loves it as it is and faithfully reproduces its likeness in the outer world of form. The conditions and events of your life are your children, formed from the molds of your subconscious impressions in sleep. They are made in the image and likeness of your innermost feeling, and they may reveal you to yourself. And then he quotes from Matthew and Luke. He says, as in heaven, so on earth, which I think is funny because in previous versions he's quoted Hermes, as above, so below.
Right.
So we see that Luke and Matthew were magicians that were quoting Hermetic principles.
And by the way, this paragraph you just read, that to me reflects what I was talking about, how it's just a different way of looking at the same thing that Abraham says, because he says it almost Abrahamically here. The conditions and events of your life are the children formed from the molds of your subconscious impressions in sleep. In other words, the sleep is reflecting what's going on in your waking life. So it's just another way of saying the same thing.
Well, and that in your waking life, he says the following sentence, they're made in the image and likeness of your innermost feeling, and that they may reveal you to yourself.
Right. So it's
like, this is why.
Yeah.
And, we talk about this all the time, is you want to know what you're feeling? You want to know what you're thinking about? Look around.
It's true.
Look around at your situation. Look around at your environment, because it's all being born out of your feelings and your thoughts and your stories.
We forget that we attract everything into our lives. I mean, it's not usually the foremost thought that goes on as we go through our day, but literally all we have to do is look at what's going on around us, and that's where our thought process has been for quite some time, because that's what's manifested. Not always
that's
easy
where
to remember.
We're aligned.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, right there.
Yeah. Whatever you have in consciousness as you go to sleep is the measure of your expression in the waking 2/3 of your life on earth. Nothing stops you from realizing your objective, save your failure to feel that you are already that which you wish to be, or that you are already in possession of the thing sought. Your subconscious gives form to your desires only when you feel your wish fulfilled. And I love that. Your subconscious gives form to your desires. And that's a nugget right there. Just the recognition that it's my subconscious that's giving form to my desires. So it's important that we are feeling or assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, because that's when our subconscious can give form to these things.
Important. It's vital. I mean, you really can't do it without it.
It's essential, right? Yeah. The unconsciousness of sleep is the normal state of the subconscious, because all things come from within yourself, and your conception of yourself determines that which comes. You should always feel the wish fulfilled before you drop off to sleep, which, like we said, that's another key that Abraham has said. Very important that they even have processes, right, in some of their books that we've read, how they're explaining as we're getting into bed and as we're closing our eyes. And Neville, too, he says this is of utmost importance. That
this has been big for me, too. I mean, this is something I've actually actively been practicing lately, because I've been recognizing both from Neville and from Abraham just how useful it is to go to sleep and do something, some sort of process as you go to sleep. So, I mean, we all talked about, what are your processes? What do you do every day? What habitually do you do in order to get yourself into alignment and to help yourself stay into alignment as much as you can? It might be meditation, could be affirmations, maybe you're doing vision boards. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. But the point is, you want to be doing some stuff. This is one of my favorite things to do, especially if I wake up in the middle of the night. I mean, we were talking about, times where we don't get enough sleep. I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I want to start applying a process. I figure, hell, I'm awake. I might as well do a process. I'm not going to go do anything else, right?
Well, and when you think about it, it sounds like the mattress salesman, right? That's
right.
Always like 1/3 of your life you are asleep.
Yes,
but
right.
Here's the thing: if we can use a process that in turn, which is feeling assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled as we're dropping off to sleep. That one process affects what's happening for that third of our life. Because although that process may only take us moments, it's continuing on as we're sleeping, which is what I think Abraham talks about a lot. And so we're actually using this big chunk of time, 7, 8, 9 hours, however long we're usually asleep, as part of our actual process for conscious creation.
Or even if it's somebody who's only getting 5 or 6 hours sleep, it's still a time to do it. It's still a time to use it for conscious creation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that. The unconsciousness of sleep is the normal state of the subconscious. So this is important. You never draw out of the deep of yourself that which you want. You always draw that which you are. And you are that which you feel yourself to be as well as that which you feel as true of others. So let's read it again.
Yeah, this is a time we need the Neville decoder ring.
Yeah, or commas. You never draw out of the deep of yourself. You never draw out of the deep of yourself that which you want. You always draw that which you are. I love this. Somebody interviewed me this weekend and they asked me for a favorite quote. And I have lots of quotes I love, but the one I pulled out was from the Talmud, that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. Right? And we're not drawing out of those depths the things we want. We're drawing the things we are. That's why this is so important. Like I talked before in the podcast today about being in that place of power, even though nothing had really changed.
Right.
Because before I made the calls sitting here, I was in victim mode, and that was what my story was. But I changed it in a moment by deciding to step into the place of a CEO that can take care of these things. And I took care of these things, right? Totally different. And the experience that started happening was drawn out of that place instead of out of the other place.
Much
so
more
this
powerful.
doesn't have to take months and years, but we have to maintain it. And we do that by being careful to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
Well, we do. And this is, to me, one of the biggest themes of all. It's one that I've tried to address a few times here on the podcasts, sometimes with success, sometimes not quite so much success as I'd like. But there are so many times in life, and you and I have talked about this quite a bit, where we just don't feel like we can get into that good place. We just feel blocked. And no matter what we do, no matter how we struggle or whatever, we just can't seem to get there. And yet, as your example very beautifully laid out, even if you're in a really rough place, if you just take an action that is in alignment with getting into alignment, literally, getting into alignment is where your alignment is as you're doing it, you can actively change the vibration even though you're in a bad place. I mean, I think that's what your analogy about what the Scorpio, the 8th house, is all about.
Right. And the thing that's important to remember is that, like, sometimes when we're experiencing something, and I'm speaking to conscious creators, I'm speaking to people who are applying the law of attraction in their life, right? Sometimes when we experience something that we don't like, we automatically start judging ourselves that we're no good at this stuff.
Right.
Right? And the thing that I like to remind myself is that, just like I used the example before, a CEO of a very successful, financially successful company, they deal with stuff all the time. They deal with money issues, right? It's how do they deal with it? What energy are they standing in when they deal with it? And so it's the same thing. It's like, don't you think that, everybody always says, I want $1 million, or
Sure.
I want to be a millionaire or a billionaire, or I want to win the lottery or whatever. Well, do you think there are any millionaires out there who ever get a headache? Of course they do, right? Does their millionaire status end because they had a day where they felt crappy?
In fact, the most
or they had a
thing,
headache, or they got in an argument with
Yep.
their spouse, or like no. And so it's about standing in that place of that which we feel ourselves to be. It's a bigger story than just this one thing we want to attract.
Right.
Because who are we? Who is that person that already has that thing? That's who we want to be. And we will still experience contrast when we're that person too. It's not a judgment of who we are being, right? So we can step into that place, into that better story.
One of the common themes I've gotten from having 5 of my 11 co-hosts be life coaches is the consistent theme. First of all, it's wonderful to have that many life coaches as co-hosts because you're the best coach person in America. But beyond that, the theme that comes up over and over and over again is how so often they have a client who's a very wealthy client who's having major relationship issues or major health issues. And so very clearly, despite the fact they've got the wealth part of attraction down pat, the other parts, they're about as far away as somebody who's living in dire poverty is from wealth. I mean, they just can't get there from here. That's how far apart it feels for them. So you can't assume just because somebody's got one thing licked that they got all of it licked. They don't necessarily. And we all, like you say, we're all dealing with contrast. It's just we're just dealing with different aspects of it.
But it doesn't change who we are unless we let it. Like,
yes.
Just because there's contrast, it's not necessarily keeping us from being who we want to be. Mm-hmm. If we'll recognize that, okay, I can still be who I want to be. I just need to figure out how does that person deal with this contrast.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And start now.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to wait to have the $1 million to make a decision like a millionaire would.
That's the beauty of doing the nighttime process, because the nighttime process is the perfect time to do that. I mean, that's why I love it. I love the fact that even if I wake up in the middle of the night, which I really didn't want to do, and I'm having a little trouble going back to sleep, this is the great opportunity for me to start practicing right now, shifting my vibration, right now, shifting my focus. And so that's what I try to do. And I think it's paying off. I can't point to definite results yet because I've been doing it for a couple of weeks now. But I'm definitely feeling different about being awake. I think that's probably the reason why I was telling you earlier, I'm getting like 9 hours of sleep. I never get 9 hours of sleep. I think there's like a part of me that says, yeah, let's keep going with this. I want to go back to sleep so I can wake up again and try it again.
Well, and I'm curious of the effect of, you said you've been practicing, and I have too, over the past month, been practicing making sure that I am assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled by practicing the little vignettes that we created as I'm falling asleep. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes I fall asleep so fast, it's like I intend to start that vignette and then I'm gone. Other times I can go all the way through it. It only lasts about a minute. But, and we are setting ourselves up. And so that may actually be having an effect.
And for me, it's either way is good. I mean, if it puts me to sleep, it's like, great, I went back to sleep. That's what I wanted anyway.
Right, exactly.
And if I don't go to sleep, actually, you know what I'm using it more for than anything else? I'm using it to try out new vignettes. I'm creating, like last night I tried a vignette I never tried before. And I was actually awake for about 5 or 10 minutes doing it. But I don't even know why I picked this particular one. I just figured, let's try a new way and see what happens. So you can try stuff out that way, too.
The first time I read these ideas from Neville, one of the things that really, really struck me is how many times myself and my clients, people I know, I mean, it's such a common theme, it's almost a meme, right? And that is worrying, up all night worrying.
Ugh, yes.
Tossing and turning because you're worrying about something. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my goodness, if this 1/3 of our life has this much power, and our thoughts in this space of time every day has this much power in our life, what are we creating when we're worrying ourselves to sleep?
Very
when
true.
We're right? It's like so much better. And I think it has to have an effect on not just what we create, not just what we manifest, but actually on the quality of sleep, which is important. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So he says, to be realized then, the wish must be resolved into the feeling of being or having or witnessing the state sought. This is accomplished by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. The feeling which comes in response to the question, how would I feel were my wish realized, is the feeling which should monopolize and immobilize your attention as you relax into sleep. You must be in the consciousness of being or having that which you want to be or have before you drop off to sleep. And even in the story that I told today, when I look at this question, how would I feel were my wish realized? Right? I was like, how would a CEO deal with this?
Mm-hmm.
How would I feel if I was very successful financially right in this moment and I was having to deal with something like this that came up?
Right.
How would I feel? Oh, I would feel empowered. I would pick up the phone. I would talk to my friends at the bank, right? I would just call everyone up. And it was an instant shift.
It's a good thing to remember, really, because when we're dealing with the issue of, okay, what am I feeling? We were dealing with that yesterday with the person that Patty was coaching, because we were kind of getting her to hone in on what are you feeling right in this moment? What's your ideal feeling? What would you like to feel? If your dream were to come true, how would you feel? And there were long pauses. You could tell she was processing it, and the reason she's processing it, I totally get why she's processing it, because I've done the same thing. You're trying to say to yourself, well, what do I feel? What would I feel? What does this feel like? And sometimes we have a little trouble putting that into words because we haven't spent a lot of time there. So it really does become a very key thing. Just taking some time to ask ourselves, what does this feel like? What am I feeling like right now? Not just what am I looking at from the observer position and saying, well, I think I feel this. What am I feeling? What am I really feeling deep down?
Yeah, I had someone send me a note that had been listening to the podcast and was thanking me for making the distinction between feelings and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Because we talked about that, right? It's like an emotion, happy, sad, mad, scared, but a feeling, I have a knot in my stomach, or I feel tired, or my shoulders feel tight, or it's a feeling in the physical body.
True.
And sometimes it's like, start there.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't, because sometimes emotions feel nebulous when we can't identify them.
Oh, yeah.
But we can say, we can tap into how our body feels and start with that. Because when you think about it, assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, we've talked about this plenty, much of these feelings are actual feelings. I felt my feet strongly and firmly planted on the floor. I felt my hands reaching out to grasp the hand of my friend. I felt these are feelings maybe easier to tap into.
Yeah, sensations really is what they
emotions.
are. There are sensations that we can feel the sensation.
So we end with this sentence. Once asleep, man has no freedom of choice. His entire slumber is dominated by his last waking concept of self. Very powerful thought.
Yeah, and a little bit of a warning in there, like be very careful about what you're thinking about before you go to sleep.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's important.
It's important, and it's so easily overlooked, but it's also empowering if we decide to look at it as empowering. It can be very, very empowering, because once we develop the habit of deciding what we're going to focus on before we go to sleep, and the habit becomes second nature, then we're truly in control of our sleep. But up until the point where we take on that habit, that's where sleep and dreams seem totally outside of our control, because they are. We gave up control.
Yeah. So that's what we can do, is just make sure of what we're thinking about as we drop off.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Hey, before we leave, I want to make sure people find out how to reach Cindie Chavez, because Cindie Chavez is one heck of a life coach, as anyone who's listening to these podcasts can tell. How do they reach Cindie Chavez?
They can reach me at my website, cindiechavez.com, CINDIECHAVEZ.com. Find me there. Send me a shout. Give me a wave. I'd love to hear from you.
All right. Sounds good. Cindie, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to continuing with our Neville Decoder rings tomorrow morning.
I'll be back.
I'll be back as well. We hope that you'll join us next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.